What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about 3 tips to minimize that gut-wrenching fear that builds up in you pre-fight. It could be months before the fight, or it could be minutes before the fight. Anywhere in between there. That's what we're talking about today, guys. All right, guys, pre-fight nerves, pre-fight fear. I truly believe that anybody who takes this sport seriously, anybody who's going to be successful at it, will have pre-fight fears. It's not something that anybody escapes, but there are varying degrees. There are the people who completely lose the cool and just cannot compete in the sport at all because the fear is just too much. And then there's the people who can still have the fear but be successful. I guess somebody like myself would be a great example. The fear builds up. There are times where I ask myself, why do I put myself through this? Actually, we'll get to all the things that go through my head leading up to the fight. But the main point is I've managed to cope with it. I can deal with it, and I have some tips that will help you guys along the way, or at least I hope they will help you. Now, I actually have to kind of reflect back because more recently, as I've got more comfortable with the whole fight situation, I've learned how to kind of deal with the fear to a certain extent. It's still there, but not like it used to be in the first 20 fights of my career where I was just a complete wreck. But even though that fear was there and just, constantly eating away at me, it was nothing like some other guys I've trained with. The kind of fear they had was just kind of unfathomable to me. So I had a buddy who went to Japan. When he was over in Japan teaching English, he decided he was going to take his first kickboxing fight, and he did it and he won. But once he got back to Canada, he was telling me that he spent the entire training camp, all the time leading up to the fight, being absolutely miserable. Like pretty much every day he was not enjoying it. The fear for him was so great that it dominated his entire day. And I just told him, I don't think this is a good idea for you to pursue. He'd already recognized that himself, but I was just basically reinforcing that it's not worth it for you. If your training camp, which is 8 weeks, is just so miserable that you hate your life, why would you do it? So yes, it's okay to have fear, but you don't want to have it so much that it dominates your entire life, every day, every minute of joy, activities, whatever else you are doing. Now, for me, fear is constantly coming and going. It's not like it's just one portion in my training camp. A week before the fight, I get really nervous and it's gone. Or an hour before the fight, that's when the nerves pop up and it's gone. For me, it's always up and down. It's just like an ebb and flow, a big wave. It's always coming and going, coming and going. And once you learn that and recognize it and you don't kind of run away from it or get that idea in your head that I'm going to deal with it and then it's never going to show up again, once you come to terms with that, the whole thing gets easier. And before I give you guys my 3 tips for dealing with nerves, I just want to explain to you some of the experiences I've had and how they've affected me and how much fear I was actually experiencing. So let's start off for about, I'd say, at the beginning of my fight career when this whole thing was new to me. And the big thing that I've been told, and I remember from back then, is I would get so grumpy. Emotionally, I would just shut down and I wouldn't want to talk about the fight. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody in my house. People would come up and ask me, I'd be at the fridge or something getting some food, like, how you feeling about the fight? You feeling happy? You feeling good? You feel like you're gonna win? And I would just kind of look at them and just give them a glare like, what are you talking to me for? Why are we talking about the fight? I just didn't have the emotional capacity back then. I was only 20, 21 to deal with the fight nerves and just relay how scared I really was. So again, it would always come and go for me, but there was very often, especially when I got within 3 weeks of the fight, that the nerves would just bubble up so much that I would not be able to relay that. And as a result, I got really, really grumpy. Now, the other thing that's interesting, which often happens to me as I'm approaching a fight, is I end up almost daydreaming the way you might when you win a lottery. You're like, ooh, maybe this will happen or maybe that'll happen. You start daydreaming about potential things that will happen so you won't have to fight. And this has happened a number of times. It doesn't really go away for me. Even right now, sometimes I'll be, going to the airport and I'll be like, oh man, maybe the flight will get canceled and I won't be able to make it there, and all of a sudden I won't have to fight. Or sometimes I'd be thinking like, oh, when I get there, maybe my opponent will get sick and I'll have to pull out and I won't have to fight. And unfortunately for me, after all that daydreaming in the past about fights being canceled because I was really scared, now that I'm kind of comfortable with it, My last fight was actually canceled because my opponent missed weight. And in the past, I'd probably be going, woo, yeah, I don't have to fight. Or at least that's initially what would be going through my head. Then the disappointment follows. Oh man, I put in all that hard work and now I just don't get to showcase myself, showcase all the work I put in. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s. You're kind of wishing the fight would get canceled, but really deep down, you know you don't want it to, but you still have those little daydreams where you're going, oh man, if this happens, I won't have to fight. Or if that happens, I won't have to fight. And that's just basically a result of all that fear just bubbling up and you kind of hoping you can escape that future fight, which is just causing all of that. But in spite of that fear being there, I've never pulled out of a fight. I've never bailed. I have heard of people who have done that at the amateur level. You know, they just can't deal with it. And, you know, hour before the fight, 2 days before the fight, they're just like, no, I'm done, I'm not fighting. And for some of those people, I actually sympathize with, because not being able to deal with those nerves is just awful. And I want to talk now about 3 things that I've done to help me calm down and be able to actually follow through and get to fight time. Because once you touch gloves in the ring, once you get up on the ring and the fight starts, it all kind of goes away. You just go into more autopilot mode and you start fighting, and you're not thinking about all the possibilities, all the negative outcomes which were before making you nervous. So guys, tip number 1 is visualization. I have talked about this so many times. I will talk about it many more in the future, but visualization is the key to calming myself down. Anytime I get those nerves, anytime I'm sitting down and I go, oh shoot, I'm fighting in 3 weeks, I'm fighting in 5 days, I'm fighting in 24 hours, I go, whoa. It's time for some visualization. Time for me to sit down, close my eyes, imagine whatever scares me most about the fight, and go through it over and over in my head. I'm going to step up into the ring. I'm going to touch gloves with my opponent. I'm going to stare him in the eye. I'm going to be calm. And I do that over and over until my heart rate starts to rest. It starts to just calm down, and I'm not having that fear implode up in me anymore. And then the reality, like I said before, is it goes away, then it comes back. It might be an hour later, it might be 2 or 3 days later, but it's always up and down. But visualization is the way to deal with it without running from it. Because if you run from your fear, the end result, I believe, will not be good. You're better off facing your fear, and then when the moment comes where that thing that you've been training for actually transpires, is actually there, you're actually ready to fight, you're getting in the ring, you've used visualization, you've faced your fears, you've gone through that moment so many times in your head already, and you will not be unprepared for it, at least mentally. Now, tip number 2, and this is something that I've been using from the very, very early stages of my career. I've actually passed this on to many, many other people who are having their first, second fight and we're going, I just feel so wrecked fight week. What do you do, Gabriel, to make yourself a little bit more calm? Well, it's about disconnecting. It's about having those moments where we utilize the visualization, which we just talked about. But then once we calm down, we do things to disconnect, things that are going to take our mind off the upcoming fight. Let us step away from that bubble of fear. We're just going to step outside of it for a while. We'll come back to it quickly, but it's nice to have moments to just disconnect. Now, how do I go about doing that? Well, the first thing is I put people in my life who are not in my fight bubble. My fight bubble consists of lots of friends, training buddies, my brother, a lot of my family, but I have people outside of that who are just not really in that world. And I'm able sometimes after training or being around people that know about the fight world to go over and spend time with these guys and just go, okay, nobody's going to ask me about the fight. Nobody's going to talk about fight stuff. It's completely disconnected. And you might be able to do this with a girlfriend you have who's just not really wanting to get into that fight world with you, maybe some friends, maybe a family member who doesn't have interest in it. I think it's good to have a disconnect. Now, another way that I do this, especially in fight week, the way I distracted myself was fun movies. I had, or rather, I guess have, a strength and conditioning coach from years ago. I don't really do much with him anymore, but he's still there. Anyway, he was having his first fight, and he asked me, Gabriel, it's fight week, what do I do? And I said, you know what, this is going to sound really stupid, but go to the movie store, in between your training sessions, in between all the other things you have, maybe at night, rent some romantic comedies. I don't know why, but for me, it just takes me to a place that's disconnected from the fight world. The movies are fun, they're happy. I'm talking about things like, old school Matthew McConaughey movies, kind of like the movies that your girlfriend would try and drag you to the theater to see, and you'd be like, I don't know, man. I don't really want to go and see that. Those type of movies, for me, for some reason, really take my mind off everything, especially on fight week. I told this guy to do that, and then he said to me after he won his fight, and he said, Gabriel, that worked so well. It helped me so much. And I was able to go and watch these goofy, fun movies where they're just talking about, relationships, and it's kind of bubbly and it's goofy and there's nothing really serious about it, and it just hooked my mind off everything. Took my mind off the upcoming fight, helped me deal with the weight cut, just helped me deal with the nerves all around. You can disconnect from the fight world with people, you can do it with activities, you can do it through movies. I don't really, it's unique to everybody. Find something that allows you to disconnect. And for me, it's worked wonders. Now, that takes us into our last stage, our last tip. Number 3 is all about believing in yourself. And I know many people have probably told you this before, just believe in yourself. I'm not talking like, oh yeah, I did such a good job, that's fantastic. It's believing in yourself because you really know you put in the work. You prepped 100%. And I'm not talking about, having to go to the gym 6, 7, 8 hours a day and going, oh, I trained as hard as I could. It's just really putting a time frame on everything. I go, okay, I'm going to put in 3 to 3.5 hours a day. I'm going to train my heart out during that time, and that is my allotted bubble to go as hard as I can. And I know if I do everything I can within that time, I will be happy with my performance. I will be able to believe in myself. When you're able to believe in yourself, at some point through all those nerves ebbing and flowing up and down, at some point it kind of plateaus out. It's different for everybody. For me, when I kind of plateau out is when I actually step into the ring, when I actually make the walk down that stage or walkway or whatever, and I get in the ring and I dip under and I step inside. For me, then I'm like, okay, I'm here, I made it through all the nerves. Now it's just time to touch gloves, look my opponent in the eye, and just get down to doing what I'm really, really good at. But if I get in the ring and I know, oh, okay, I didn't put in the work, I didn't put in the effort that I could have, it's very difficult to believe in yourself. So remember, when you're doing each session, each training session, don't look at it like, oh, I'm just going to go in and blah, 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 do whatever. Look at it like you're going to put in everything you have, because every time you put in a hard session, put in a hard session, put in a hard session, all that, when you put it together, ends up building up to confidence and that belief in yourself that you will be able to perform because you put in the time, because you didn't give up on yourself, because you were able to commit to something. This is a harder one than the others because the others are just disconnecting or take a couple moments to work on visualization. This one is about putting in the hard 6 or 7 or 8 or 10-week training camp so that at the end, you're confident and you can believe in yourself. This one takes a whole lot of work. It's the hardest one to accomplish. And it can't be unjustified belief in yourself. Like, oh man, I'm just a bad dude and I'm going to knock everybody out. It doesn't matter what happens. That's not going to work. It needs to be based on something that's going to make you confident because you know you really put in the time and the effort. Anyway, guys, this is a great debate for anybody out there who's competed before. How do you make the whole process easier? How do you avoid those fears and those nerves? If you guys have some suggestions that I didn't mention today, throw them down in the comments below. Maybe your comment will help somebody else out there get their win and deal with this whole experience, make it that much easier for them. I appreciate it. They appreciate it. So definitely take the time to just write something down below. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, train hard, and I'll see you back here soon for another video.